Hello class. For this week's assignment, we're going to be doing blending art. The idea for this is that we're going to be taking full images and you might do some levels or curves adjustments to those images and flatten them out. But the main bit is that you're going to be compositing them together only using blending modes. Now, what if you have to mask something? Well, use blend if, and you'll be able to mask things together. Well, what if it's not working well? Pick some different images. This is kind of how this one goes. Let me show you what some of the students were able to do in previous semesters to give you an idea of what's happening. Here's a beautiful owl on a moon with some snow. Here is a very science fiction futuristic style image. Here's a number of forest imagery that's been blended together beautifully. Here's almost a wedding invitation occurring that's happening just with a few blends. Here's a beautiful series of images to create this gorgeous cityscape. Here's something that could be a cover for an Edgar Allan Poe poem. Here's just a lovely model. Lovely model. Here, this looks like it could be right inside of a magazine. It just worked out really well. This one is amazing. Just the number of layers she was able to assemble together. This one I think blended especially well together with the lion over the person. I think this works out great. It kind of says something too. You almost have a theme where you can see the man's face and the cityscape, but then at the same time you have the lion and you have the savannah sort of imagery. Just tells a story. I think this one's great. It just looks like the earth's being dropped into a glass of water. This is stunning. The smoke effects blended really well, especially with the faces. It just came out really well. Looks like it could be a book cover. This one I love. It's got another science fiction feel to it. Just great use of the blending modes. Also great use of blending modes. We've got this statue looks like a philosopher, and we have this library going on. It just goes so well together. And again, this one is just gorgeous. It's a great way to mask things out by using this image that has some highlights and some darks and then kicking out the darks so that it presents a frame. And then he did a variation on it so we could see that was no fluke. I thought this worked out fairly well. Again, another use of the moon to be the light object. And another good science fiction piece, again with the hexagon shapes. Here's, I think that this layer could have been a little bit darker, but otherwise we see some great blending together. Great moon. An overlay layer on top of all this would have pushed the contrast. So I frequently tell students, check it one last time by putting just an empty adjustment layer on top of everything and throwing it into overlay. See if you can increase the contrast a bit. If it's too bright, try a multiply. If it's too dark, try a screen, and you'd be surprised what you can get out of it. And we're back at the beginning. Okay, so with this handout, let's read through this real quick, and then I will walk you through a way to do the assignment. Now, for this assignment, you will demonstrate your knowledge of blending modes by creating an aesthetically pleasing art or graphic montage. For your source images, as always, use non-copyrighted material or material you own the copyright to. Do you remember those textures? You own those. You could apply them as with an adjustment layer. This could be useful. One way to generate images that's useful for this assignment is to carefully place three-dimensional objects on a flatbed scanner and do a scan in a dark room with the lid open. Be careful not to scratch your scanner. I've done this with things like baseballs and tennis balls, and because the depth of field is so short, you'll have all this black in the background. That will work great with your lightning modes. It will create drastic lightning that ends up with deep blacks, perfect for your blending modes. You can take photos of objects outdoors on sunny days with white paper as a backdrop. That's a great way to get bright backgrounds. This also works really well with the darkening blend modes. And make sure you work with high resolution images for this assignment. Using lower resolution source images will add unnecessary obstacles to your work. So your size is going to be 8.5 by 11. Either horizontal or vertical, whichever you feel will work best. You're going to turn in a PNG file. So that's just going to have one layer. Keep your original Photoshop document in case you want to go back and edit something. Don't throw it away. Don't turn that one in. I just want the PNG. We're going to do this at a 300 pixels per inch. That should be good enough size. All right. So your goal is to create an image that is coherent in style. So all of your effects should look intentional, even if it was accidental. It should be pleasing to view. So out of control colors that look unintentional should be avoided. You can dim those down. Fill opacity is great if you're using one of the blending modes that's affected by fill opacity for that. Otherwise, you could throw in, say, a gray adjustment layer, just a gray color, and then set that to, say, color blend mode, and then just lower that, and that will knock out some of the sometimes grotesque colors that can appear. You'll want to utilize full layer blending, so avoid making cutouts with masks or leaving unwanted empty space. So in other words, if I catch a mask, then I might be annoyed. But if I don't catch a mask, I would have no way to tell. So if you get stumped and you're like, this would be beautiful if only I masked out that one dot, I'm not going to know. But if you start masking a lot, I'm going to catch on. And you want this to be cohesive in design. There shouldn't be a piece that unnaturally stands out from the rest of your work. So don't get attached to those precious little darlings, those little things that you just swear would be so great. It just doesn't seem to fit with anything else. Just chuck it for this assignment. You can bring it back in for something else. Now, art is subjective, so study other collage works and photo montages, look up illustrations for inspirations. You should have fun with this, but you're going to need to spend some time on it to produce a result that you're proud of. Now, you can add blending options to adjustment layers to emulate duplicating the entire image and set it to a blending mode. We did that a number of times. The image, if you'll remember, and just make something real quick. The one that I tended to go for was a brightness contrast set to 0, and then when I set that to anything, it will blend everything below it. So that's kind of a go-to. So that will save you time and effort on that. Multiply will darken everything. Overlay will increase contrast. Screen will brighten everything. So it's a great idea to possibly run over this one more time with those effects. And then you'll have a lighter or a darker or a more contrasty image. So in other words, let's go ahead and do the setup here. I'll make a new layer, and I'm going to set this to inches real quick. Let's start with a horizontal layout. So I'll do the width at 11 inches, and I will do the size at 8.5, and I will do the resolution at 300 pixels per inch. Boom, 8-bit. Background doesn't matter. 8-bit RGB color. I'm not going to color manage this document. If you feel the need to, go ahead and do a working RGB sRGB IEC 6 1966-2.1 for your color mode so that it will show up correctly on my monitor. So this is the image that we're going to be working with. Now, what I have done is I've gone through Pixabay. I created a quick account, and then I gathered a ton of images. Now, collecting all these images, I'm probably going to end up using 4 of them for this assignment. It took about 2.5 hours to get them. Now, that's on top of the other copyright-free images that I already have available and are also at my disposal. So you keep in mind, a big chunk of this is just going to be going through that list that I have up on the website of all of the copyright-free documents, all the copyright-free image resources. You want to go through those, find things that you like, and get going. Keep in mind, things with black and white backgrounds or dark backgrounds or light backgrounds will blend really nicely together, whereas things that have a whole bunch of color may be a little bit trickier. Full-sized images will work really well as well. Things with a lot of grays will work with them as well. And you'll want to start picking and pulling from there. So without further ado, I'm going to cut this preparation video and get right into the nitty-gritty of doing an assignment. Keep in mind, yours is going to look completely different from mine, but them's the breaks. I'm just going to show you a way to do it. Here we go.